What's good, super friends? It's your tío Pepe from the mean streets of Sunland Park. Hey, dice el feo que quiere 3 de tripitas y 3 de buche. Sorry about that. Doing my little side hustle here. I've always had the reputation of being the cool uncle. You know, the one that lets you taste his old cough syrup when mom and dad aren't looking. So I always hook you up. I'm back to hook you up again, fam. For only $2 a month, you can skip these annoying ads and get our episodes ad-free and a week early. You'll also be the first to know when I release my MFTs. You've heard of NFTs? These are MFTs, baby. Mexican fungible tokens, vato. The first ones of Rocky Estar y Super Muñeco will be out soon. Shoot me a DM on the DL. Ain't none of Isela and Elena's business, if you know what I mean. We'll also send you stickers a few times a year and shout you out on our show. Link is in the show notes, or check us out on patreon.com/technicallyaconversation. Alfred G Packer left Provo, Utah with a group of prospectors to Breckenridge, Colorado to try to strike it rich during the Colorado Gold Rush in 1873. Against the advice of others, he decided to travel to Gunnison, Colorado in the middle of an unusually harsh winter storm. While he didn't find gold, he did become infamous for resorting to murder and cannibalism. Today, we'll discuss who Alfred Packer was, accounts of the incident based on 2 of Packer's confessions, and the fate of America's first cannibal on this episode of Technically a Conversation. Greetings, you're listening to Technically a Conversation, a podcast where we share an interesting topic or story with each other and hope you find it interesting as well. I'm one half of your host, Jose, and I'm joined yet again after a long hiatus by my lovely co-host, Elena. How are you doing today?
I'm doing splendid. How are you?
Doing good. I don't know if you heard last month, Utah passed a transphobic bill that would prohibit people from using a restroom from a gender they were not assigned at birth. Are you familiar with this?
No, I have not heard of that.
Okay, so Utah lawmakers claimed it was intended to protect women, although there has never been a case where a trans person ever harmed anyone in a public bathroom. In fact, it's usually the opposite, and there have been cases of LGBTQ plus people being harassed or beaten up in restrooms. Now, this law requires people to report anyone that uses a restroom that doesn't align with the gender they were assigned at birth, using a snitch line developed by the state. There was also a place on the form where you could upload a photograph of the person that you were snitching on. People seeing the opportunity flooded the snitch line with over 4,000 troll complaints.
Oh my goodness.
Utah State Auditor John Dougal was pretty upset about this, saying that he was an auditor, not a bathroom monitor. Some of the troll complaints were signed as having come from John Dougal, who claims he didn't submit any complaints to the snitch line, so he was throwing all of those out. People were submitting a bunch of nonsensical submissions, jokes. Others were sending memes. Utah Democratic Senator Jennifer Plum stated, quote, "Apparently Utah's solution to people feeling unsafe in restrooms is to encourage folks to take photos of and focus extreme attention to the private parts of others who are taking care of a biological need to eliminate waste." Dougal, who is a Republican, if you probably can't tell, stated that his office, quote, "has no interest in those types of photos," and he was disgusted by Plum's suggestion of such revolting and criminal behavior. The following day, that section of the complaint form where you were encouraged to submit photos had been removed. The same thing also happened in Indiana and Missouri when they were trying to institute their own transphobic snitch lines. The one in Missouri actually crashed when someone uploaded the script of the Bee Movie.
What's the Bee Movie? Like the Bee, like the cartoon one?
Yeah, the cartoon one.
Oh my goodness. People have too much time on their hands.
I don't know. I think that's good that they were able to crash that fucking site.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is.
Who has time for that?
Well, apparently Utah lawmakers do, and so do lawmakers in Missouri and Indiana.
No, I mean, who has time to be watching out if whoever's using the restroom and then taking a picture and uploading it? Just the Karens of the world.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just more things that the the Republicans and the conservatives are doing to try and take away people's rights. And by doing that, they're trying to make like a police state where you snitch on other people and take pictures of them in the restroom. Because apparently that's safer than...
Yeah. But you said in the beginning that there had never been any reports of anything like that happening before. Do you mean just in Utah or?
As far as I can tell, there's never been any reports of a trans person harming somebody else in a restroom.
Okay. Anywhere?
Anywhere, yeah.
Okay. Because I know like a lot of the colleges complain also about the transgender. Usually it's the females, right, that are complaining about the transgender females that are using their restroom or their locker rooms. And
I don't know. I know that when Utah passed this law, there was a lot of opposition against it. A lot of it. And there were a lot of protests trying to get them not to pass it, but they passed it anyway. And as far as I can tell, I saw an update that there had been 12,000 complaints that had been submitted. All but 5 of them were legit. Everything else, well, they didn't even say it was legit. They said that they were investigating 5 out of the 12,000 because everything else was just people trolling them and sending them jokes and memes and bullshit.
I'm kind of surprised because Utah seems like a very conservative state.
I know that they're very led by religion over there. There's a huge Mormon population. I don't know. I thought that was pretty funny. This guy's all pissed off because now he feels like he's a bathroom monitor. Even though they were encouraging people to take pictures and submit them on the website. There was even a forum and there was a place to upload the pictures.
Yeah, that's too much. That's not your job, I feel. Like, that's not my job to report somebody. If you really want to know, then hire somebody to sit out there and actually be a bathroom monitor. F that.
I don't know. I just thought that was absurd, so I wanted to bring that up.
Very absurd.
All right, enough fucking around, Elena. Ready to get started?
I am ready.
Great. Let's get started. Now, I know it's the 2000s now, but if you're around in the 18 and 1900s, do you think you would have wanted to travel west in search of gold?
Probably.
So what if your husband wanted to go to the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, leave the family to try his luck in finding gold? Do you think you would have been supportive?
So you're saying I would not go with him, I would let him go alone, and I would stay home and take care of our 18 children?
Well, this would be like scenario number 2.
Yeah.
Also, I've only met 2 out of your 18 children. Where have you been hiding the other 16 of them?
In the 1800s, I had that many. I would say that he could go and look for gold because he's probably not helping me with the kids anyway. So go make some money.
All right. This is all going to make sense. Today, we're going to talk about Alfred G Packer, who went to the San Juan Mountain area of the Rocky Mountains during the Colorado Gold Rush.
Ah, sí, Alfred, sí lo conozco. No te creas.
Ya era compa tuyo de la prepa.
He was my buddy. He lived in the farm 5 miles out.
Exactly. Now, spoiler alert, Alfred Packer is pretty well known, but not for having found any gold. I mean, that would be boring if this was a story of how a man overcame the odds and adversity and became a self-made millionaire striking it rich during the Colorado Gold Rush. Nobody wants to hear that, right?
Right. Nobody.
All right, the following is from a Legends of America article by Kathy Alexander. Link in the show notes.
Show notes.
On February 9th, 1874, Alfred G Packer left the Ute Native American campsite near Montrose, Colorado, to catch up with a group of 4 men who had left a week earlier to travel to a government cattle camp near Gunnison, Colorado. Packer organized a group of 5 men to take the journey with him. On April 16th, 1874, Packer arrived at the cattle camp alone, looking surprisingly fit for a man who had just completed the 2-month winter trek through the Rocky Mountains. When asked what happened to the rest of his party, Packer claimed his feet got wet and frozen, and the men abandoned him. After a short stay at the cattle camp, Packer accompanied 2 other men to Sawatch, Colorado. While on his trip, Packer was seen using a skinning knife that belonged to one of the men from his missing party and had a large sum of money that he was spending freely. This made the other 2 men wonder what had really happened to the missing men from Packer's party. Had they been murdered, or did they meet a more gruesome fate? Now, before we continue, are you familiar with Alfred Packer's story?
I don't know if it's the same story that I'm thinking about, the ones that like froze to death outside some cabin.
So I guess that answers my next question. Is that what you think might have happened to Packer's party? They might have frozen to death?
Well, his feet got frozen. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, that if it's the story that I'm thinking about, I can't remember all the details, but I think there were signs of a struggle, though, in the story that I'm thinking about. But I'm not sure.
We'll see if you're right. Let me give you a little bit of background on Packer and how he got to this part of the story. So Packer was born in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania on January 21st, 1842, and was one of 3 children of James Packer and Esther Greiner. Packer enlisted in the Union Army during the American Civil War in April of 1862, but Packer had epilepsy and was honorably discharged 8 months later. He re-enlisted in the Army again in June of 1863 because there were no computers, but was discharged a second time in April of 1864 due to his seizures. After this, he moved west to the Rocky Mountain region, working in various mining-related jobs for the next 9 years. In November of 1873, Packer met a man named Bob McGrew, who was getting together a group of 21 men from Provo, Utah, to accompany him to Breckenridge, Colorado, as gold was being found in the region. Packer joined the group and left Provo with them. The winter of 1873 and 1874 was unusually harsh, and after 3 months of difficult travel, they staggered into the camp of the Ute Native American chief Ouray near present-day Montrose, Colorado. Chief Ouray recommended the group postpone their expedition until the spring due to the harsh weather and offered to allow the men to stay with his tribe until the winter had passed. So far it kind of sounds like your story is lining up. Maybe they did freeze to death.
Maybe. And
I actually thought that this was super generous of Chief Ouray, considering how Native Americans have historically been treated by the Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he just pretty much offered to let them stay there for 3 months.
Right.
4 of the men became restless and decided to ignore Chief Ouray's offer and advice and decided to travel to the government cattle camp near the Los Pinos Indian Agency near Gunnison, Colorado, led by a man named Preston Nutter.
Nutter Butter.
Preston Nutter Butter. Actually, some of these people had weird nicknames. I didn't jot them all down, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had called them Preston Nutter Butter.
Cool.
So I looked it up on Google Maps, and this is a 41-hour walk. So on paper, it shouldn't take more than a few days. But keep in mind, they're up in the mountains, and it's snowy and windy, making the trip long and dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Packer actually attempted to go with Nutter's group, but he was ordered back to the camp at gunpoint, and Packer did as he was ordered.
Who held the gun?
I'm assuming it was Nutter since that was his group, but they didn't give any explanation as to who held the gun. There was also no explanation given as to why he was asked to go back to the camp. Either way, Packer was determined to go to Los Pinos Indian Agency, so he got his own group of men together. Their names were Shannon Wilson Bell, James Humphrey, Frank Miller, no relation to the famed comic book writer, George Noon, and Israel Swan. Packer and his men left a week after Nutter and his men on February 9th, 1874. Bob McGrew, the leader of all 21 men, actually guided Packer's party until the horses could no longer continue, and at that point, McGrew unloaded all the men's provisions and went back to Ouray's camp along with the horses. And here we know the rest of the story. Packer arrived at Los Pinos Indian Agency alone on April 16th, 1874, and met up again with Preston Nutter, the man that led the first group. He tells Nutter about the other men abandoning him when his feet got wet and frozen, and after staying with that group for a few days, joins Nutter and 2 other men to Sawatch, Colorado. While on this trip, Packer is seen using a skinning knife that belonged to Frank Miller and spending money like he was an award-winning hip-hop artist in a Vegas strip joint. He even offered to loan money to one of the other 2 men. At this point, Nutter and the other 2 men began getting really suspicious of Packer and his story that the other men abandoned him. So we'll find out what happened to those men after we return from a quick commercial break.
If you like true crime, dark history, the haunted and paranormal, then we think you'll like Ghost Town.
Ghost Town is hosted by me, Rebecca Lieb.
And me, Jason Horton.
We cover both notorious and obscure true crimes,
The haunted, paranormal, and unexplained.
and the dark history of everything from world events to pop culture.
There are new episodes of Ghost Town every Wednesday and Friday.
Find out for yourself what Vulture.com called essential listening and one listener called a total waste of time.
So pause the podcast you're listening to right now.
And go subscribe to Ghost Town for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And at ghosttownpod.com.
Hey, this is Smith from The Story Of. Join myself and my co-hosts Mike, Camp, Bill, and Joe on an exhilarating journey through the unknown, the bizarre, and the extraordinary. Every week we delve into a new topic armed with individual research and a passion for storytelling, but folks, here's the twist. We share nothing that we have found with each other until we meet up to record. We're going to uncover conspiracies from the Montauk Project to alien encounters with U.S. presidents. We'll peel back the layers of mystery and expose the truth, or at least our best theories. Weird history unearthed, forgotten tales, unsolved mysteries, and historical oddities, from out-of-place artifacts to history's weirdest jobs. We got sports sagas. Dive into the stories behind iconic teams' names and scandals that rock the sports world. Join us for Beyond the Ordinary. From Bigfoot to time travel, we'll explore the fringes of reality and challenge what you think you knew. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let Smith's wit, Mike's curiosity, Camp's skepticism, Bill's enthusiasm, and Joe's dry humor guide you through The Story Of, where we have found that there's more to history than what's in the books. Available on all major platforms. Subscribe now and let the stories begin.
And we're back.
We're back.
Did you do any gold mining during our break, Elena?
I wish.
What about gold digging?
No, I'm not a gold digger.
Gold digger?
Not a gold digger.
Now, before we get to the reveal, did you want to take a guess at what happened now that you have more details?
Okay, if it's still the story that I'm thinking it is, I believe that these people were found naked or without clothing or without shoes, or I don't know. But I know that when people get cold or so cold, they start to think or feel that they're hot. So they start to take off their clothing, and then they kind of go a little crazy too. And then they bury themselves in the snow to keep warm. I don't know if that's what happened or not, but that's my guess.
Well, you are right that when people have severe frostbite, they do start to feel hot and they do take off their clothes. Let's see if you're right about this story, though.
Okay.
And sorry if it felt like I was rushing it, but I know our last episode was really long. So,
Very.
yeah, so I'm trying to make this one not as long so that way I don't have to spend my entire next 2 weekends editing.
No worries. I know.
Nutter and the other two men were now suspicious of Packer and his story after seeing him with Miller's knife and a large sum of money. They were so suspicious that they threatened to hang Packer. As they were about to hang him, General Charles Adams, who was the head of Los Pinos Indian Agency, stepped in just in time to save Packer's life. Adams began an investigation and interrogated Packer. Packer actually gave a signed confession. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, please.
So for context, Packer mentions a man named California. Like I said, these people had weird names.
Mm-hmm.
That was a nickname that they gave for George Noon. He also mentions a man named the Butcher, but they don't state which one of the men went by that nickname.
What about the baker and the candlestick maker?
Those were not mentioned at all, neither in the article nor in his confession.
Oh, man.
But
Okay.
I'll go ahead and have AI read it since nobody wants to hear me stumble through his confession.
Yeah, all right.
Old Man Swan died first and was eaten by the other 5 persons about 10 days out of camp. 4 or 5 days afterward, Humphreys died and was also eaten. He had about $133. I found the pocketbook and took the money. Sometime afterward, while I was carrying wood, the butcher was killed, as the other 2 told me accidentally, and he was also eaten. Bell shot California with Swan's gun and I killed Bell, shot him. I covered up the remains and took a large piece along, then traveled 14 days into the agency. Bell wanted to kill me with his rifle, struck a tree, and broke his gun.
So I guess we know why he looked incredibly fit when he arrived at the agency, right?
It was eating everybody to stay alive.
Yeah, apparently they ate each other to stay alive. General Adams believed that if Packer was telling the truth, he would be able to lead a group of men to the original campsite where the physical evidence would either prove or disprove Packer's signed confession. Packer originally agreed, but when he was taking the men to the camp, he claimed that he was lost and rushed at Constable Herman Lauder with a knife, leading to Packer being jailed in Saguache. The men were able to find the campsite, however, and the remains of the 5 men were found at that single site, not along the trail like Packer had said in his confession. Packer was arrested and charged with murder. He wasn't put in a traditional jail. The jail was described as being just a log cabin. Someone traded Packer a makeshift key for some supplies, allowing Packer to escape.
I'll give you a key so you can escape if you give me some of your supplies.
Well, I mean, who knows what type of condition these people were living in, so maybe they're like, fuck it. I'll take my chances with the cannibal, but at least have some supplies.
Right. He might eat me, but
At least I'll have some supplies. Packer was discovered living in Cheyenne, Wyoming, under the alias of John Schwartz on March 11th, 1883, 9 years after he escaped. The man who found them was Jean Cabazon, one of the members of the original 21 mining party who was recruited by Bob McGrew.
like cabezon.
That's what I thought too. No, like I wasn't like mispronouncing it or anything. Like I don't know Spanish. No, it's not cabezon, but I do want to say cabezon every time I see his name. But it's Cabazon, Cabazon.
Okay.
So again, he was part of the original 21 mining party that was recruited by Bob McGrew. Cabazon was one of the men who had stayed behind in Chief Oray's camp during the winter of 1874. Cabazon reported Packer to the local sheriff, who apprehended him and contacted General Adams. Adams persuaded Packer to sign a second confessional, which unfortunately was not quoted in this article, but according to the summary provided, Packer signed the confession on March 16, 1883, and stated that Shannon Bell had gone mad and killed the others with a hatchet while Packer was conveniently out scouting. When he returned, Bell charged at Packer with his hatchet, and Packer shot him twice in the stomach. Lost and alone in the camp of dead men, Packer only resorted to cannibalism after several more days, when it was his only means of survival.
I can believe that.
So which confession do you think sounds more believable?
I'm going to go with number 2.
Number 2.
Confession number 2.
Sadly, we don't know what the truth was, but I can tell you what happened after that second confessional.
Uh-oh, okay.
So Packer was found guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced to death by hanging on April 6, 1883. However, the Colorado Supreme Court reversed the sentence on appeal. Packer was retried on June 8, 1886, and the jury convicted Packer of 5 counts of manslaughter and sentenced him to 40 years, 8 years for each count. Now, his credibility was brought into question due to the 2 conflicting confessions that he had previously signed. Either way, at the time, the 40-year sentence was the longest sentence that had ever been given in U.S. history up until that point.
Wow.
After serving close to 15 years, Packer was paroled on February 8, 1901. He went to work as a guard at the Denver Post after his release. Now, would you like to take a guess at what happened after his release?
He ended up eating somebody else.
That's actually a really good guess, but he was actually said to have been a model citizen and was well liked by all his neighbors and maintained his innocence until the day that he died. He actually died of dementia on April 23rd, 1907, and was rumored to have become a vegetarian after his infamous incident.
I don't blame him. Who would want to eat meat after eating human flesh?
That's the part that makes me doubt if it was completely intentional, what Packer did, because I would feel like if he intentionally murdered those people to eat them, I mean, why become a vegetarian, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I wanted to know is why was he charged with premeditation? Like, on what grounds? Did he purposely pick out these people knowing that he had so much money in his whatever and he had a knife and he had whatever he was going to steal from them, kill them off one by one so he could take their money and their knives or whatever and eat them? Like, I don't know. Seems a little too far-fetched for me.
Maybe, but at the least they gave him manslaughter, so
So accidental because they succumbed to the elements and he made them go with them, but he didn't hold a gun to their head.
I think for manslaughter, it doesn't have to be accidental. It could also be that it was like something that wasn't planned. Like premeditated means that he planned it. Manslaughter meant, he could have just gone crazy and killed him without having had like a motive prior to that. So maybe...
But then that's temporary insanity.
I don't know if they had temporary insanity back in 1886.
They only had witches and cannibals.
Yeah, witches, cannibals, and devil worshippers probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but if that part about him having become a vegetarian is true, that's the part that makes me doubt if it truly was premeditated. So maybe, the truth kind of lies a little bit in the middle of both.
Right.
I mean, really, there's no way to tell. I think the fact that he didn't go on a murdering spree after he was paroled, either he was too old to do it or, maybe that was not his initial intent,
Mm-hmm.
Because when he died, he was actually buried as a veteran, and they had listed like his accomplishments, I guess, in those 2 short years that he served.
Oh, that's good.
And even in the military, he was honorably discharged. So it didn't seem like he had any history of acting up prior to that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I had actually first heard of Alfred Packer when I was a kid. On Cannibal Corpse's first album, Eaten Back to Life, the liner notes stated, quote, "This album is dedicated to the memory of Alfred Packer, the first American cannibal, R.I.P."
Although we don't know if that's true.
Well, I think he is considered to be the first American cannibal.
Oh, just because he ate the people to stay alive. He's considered a cannibal because of that.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, at least as far as history goes. I mean, I'm sure, when we're talking about like the Wendigo and stuff, we're talking about how this was something that would happen sometimes with some Native Americans. So there's probably history that goes back farther than that. But as far as like where there's recorded history, he is the first American cannibal.
Oh, that's why you have a Cannibal Corpse shirt on.
Oh, am I wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt? I didn't even notice.
Okay, Martha. Okay, Fiona.
Oh, wow. What a coincidence. I didn't even notice I was wearing that. Now, I remember when I first read this on the Cannibal Corpse album, I remember thinking, I wonder if that's true. But, of course, this was before the internet, so I had never researched it and I had forgotten completely about it up until last week when I was watching a documentary on Cannibal Corpse and they mentioned that. And I was like, oh, yeah. I always meant to look that up when I was a kid.
You didn't want to look it up in the Encyclopedia Britannica that we had? Volumes A through Z?
I don't think it was Britannica. I think it was like some like bootleg encyclopedia. It was like Encyclopedia Americana or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I watched that documentary and they talked about that, it did remind me of having read that. And I was like, huh. I had always meant to look that up as a kid. I hadn't thought about it since I was in high school at least. So I'm going to go ahead and look it up. And that's where I came across this story.
That's cool.
Are you familiar with the band Cannibal Corpse?
I sure am. Well, I grew up with you, so of course.
Sorry if you hated them. I know a lot of people don't like them.
Oh, I didn't hate them. Are they the ones that came out in the Ace Ventura?
Yeah. Yeah. And they actually mentioned that in the Cannibal Corpse documentary also. They were saying that it was Jim Carrey that wanted them to be on there.
Oh, wow. He's a huge Cannibal Corpse fan, I guess.
He's a huge death metal fan. Like he was saying that he loves like Cannibal Corpse. There was some interview he did with the Arsenio Hall show. With Arsenio Hall from the Arsenio Hall show.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was saying he was a huge fan of Cannibal Corpse and Napalm Death and all these bands. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I would have never guessed.
I would have never guessed either.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, he initially lobbied for Cannibal Corpse to be on Ace Ventura. Cannibal Corpse initially declined because he thought that they were going to be like made fun of or something.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Cannibal Corpse's lyrics are silly, they saw themselves as serious musicians. I mean, they still do. And they've written some incredible songs. Although, yeah, the lyrics are silly. They write about like their horror lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he thought was going to happen, is that Jim Carrey was going to just make fun of them and like kind of like shit on them. So they initially declined, but then like the producers went like, Jim Carrey is insistent that he wants you guys to be in the movie. So they're like, fuck it, what's the worst that can happen? And they were already popular at that point, but when that had happened, they like super blew up.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I remember you were like super excited to watch them on the movie. Well, in the movie.
That was the only reason I wanted to see the Ace Ventura movies, because I wanted to see Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah, I remember. I remember.
That was before there were music videos of Cannibal Corpse. They didn't come out with their music video until the following album, the first one.
Yeah.
They obviously didn't play them on MTV or anything, so
No.
watching them in Ace Ventura was my only way of seeing them unless I saw them live, which I was a little kid, so there was no way my parents were gonna let me go see them.
Right, yeah. Our parents.
My parents, your parents would have let me go, but mine...
My parents would have let me go. Your parents would not have let you go.
Yeah. And once I got braver, I probably would have sneaked out.
Yeah. True.
All right. So this week's whiskey pick is one that you recently tasted. I don't know if you remember, but I took a bottle of it to your house on Mother's Day.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we killed the whole bottle.
Yeah, it was a big hit. We all liked it.
Yeah. And it is none other than the legendary Buffalo Trace. Buffalo Trace Distillery is known for producing some of the most celebrated and sought-after bourbons amongst collectors and connoisseurs, including Weller's, Eagle Rare, E.H. Taylor, George T. Stagg, Blanton's, and the big daddy of them all, Pappy Van Winkle.
Woo.
No pun intended. Now, since you've tried Buffalo Trace and Weller's, which is considered to be the poor man's Pappy, what do you think? Do you like their bourbon?
Yeah, but I preferred Buffalo Trace for sure.
They are very similar. I don't know if I have a preference of one over the other. It just depends, I think, on how I'm feeling.
Mm.
But I think that they're very similar.
I think the Buffalo Trace reminded me of old fashioned, and like it already kind of had the flavor of an old fashioned, and I think that's why I enjoyed it a lot more.
Yeah, it is a wheated bourbon, so it's definitely on the sweeter side of bourbons. And old fashions are usually very sweet, so I can see where you thought that.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo Trace, they make a lot of other bourbons in addition to the ones I just mentioned. They also make Benchmark and Early Times, which are their bottom shelf offerings, but they're also pretty good. In fact, everything that I've tried from Buffalo Trace has been really good, and most of their stuff is a good value. I say most of their stuff because, of course, there's Pappy, which fucks everything up. But, but you know, retail price is only $250, so even then it's not that ridiculous. It's just ridiculous when it goes to the secondary market.
Right.
The one that I have here is just a regular Buffalo Trace. It's their signature bourbon, and it comes in at $26 in my area when I can find it. I feel that for that price, it's an amazing value. There is no age statement on the bottle, so it's aged for at least 4 years, though it's rumored to be aged 6 to 8 years. And like I was saying, being a wheated bourbon, it is pretty sweet. It's one of the sweeter ones out there. Buffalo Trace describes the tasting notes as brown sugar, spice, oak, toffee, dark fruit, and anise. I don't get a lot of the oakiness or smokiness from it. Did you get any smokiness or oakiness from it?
No, not at all. I don't like smoky bourbon or whiskey. Ugh.
I love it.
No, thank you.
Were you able to pick up any of those notes?
Brown sugar and what else did you say? I didn't, not the fruit, but the brown sugar for sure.
Spice, oak, toffee, dark fruit, and anise. Anise is like what they put in the sweet tamales.
Yeah, I actually don't really like anise, to be honest. And I did not taste the anise, or else I would have not liked it. But the first two notes for sure, I could taste the spice and the brown sugar.
Yeah, that's what I get too. I get more of like a maple syrupy type of flavor. And again, it's not oaky or smoky, which is what a lot of people don't like about whiskey. So you don't get that at all. At least I don't get that. So I do think that it's very inoffensive and it's a very good beginner bourbon if you're just getting into bourbon. Smoky and oaky flavors, I think those are more of a turnoff if you're just getting into it. I think that's more when you're looking for things that are more complex.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a good beginner bourbon. It's only 90 proof, so it's really easy to drink. I see it every once in a while, so I think it's not as scarce as it once was, but you might need some patience and have to look around a little bit to find it. I've seen it at Specs and Costco, and again, at $26, it's an easy buy recommendation. I always try to have it on hand to offer to people who are not that familiar with bourbon and they're just starting their bourbon journey because it's very approachable, it's not very complex, and it just tastes good.
Yes.
And for $26, it's an impulse buy.
Yes, I agree. It's really good.
So why is there a big buffalo on the label? And what's up with the name? Do you know?
No.
No.
Why would I know?
I don't know. You like to read stuff?
I did not read the bottle, so no.
All right. So ancient buffalo would migrate to the banks of the Kentucky River in such large quantities and for so many years that they had literally carved a path to the Kentucky River. This led early Americans to the wilderness to explore new regions of the country. Buffalo Trace has been making bourbon from that trail on the banks of the Kentucky River for over 200 years. And they named their bourbon in tribute to the buffalo and that trail and the pioneers who followed them, because that path is actually called Buffalo Trace.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So since Elena said that was cool, special shout out to our super homie, super friends, Sophia, Natasha, Eric, Angie, Eli, Madtown Charity, Katya, Victor, and Christine. If you want to be super cool and help support the show, get the episodes a week early and ad-free, get your name shouted out on the show, and get some stickers from us a few times a year. I'm actually getting ready to send out the new ones. Check us out at patreon.com/technicallyaconversation or check the show notes.
Check the show notes.
Show notes. Best of all, it's only $2 a month, baby. You can't even buy cigarettes or a bottle of Buffalo Trace for that.
Definitely not a bottle of Buffalo Trace.
On that high note, we hope that you enjoyed the show and you join us again next week. If you're enjoying the show, leave us a review, tell a friend, and subscribe wherever fine podcasts are sold.
Yeah.
Follow us on the socials at GreetingsTAC, email us at greetingstac@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail at 915-317-6669 if you have a story of when you consumed human flesh to share with us.
Or you can keep that to yourself.
Yeah, that would probably be a better idea. You'll definitely end up on some lists if you if you send that in a voicemail.
Yeah, please don't let us know.
On next week's episode of Technically a Conversation, new episodes drop Monday. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show.